How do you build a culture of care in an intercultural world when each person operates from their own set of beliefs, norms, and expectations? Over the next few episodes, Karen and I are going to explore this topic and share some of the tools that are part of our Bridging Cultures for Safety program. I am Nuala.
And I am Karen. And we are the Safety Collaborators.
Our mission is to help people have better conversations and change the way they think about safety. Consider us your thinking partners, sharing expertise and wisdom in everything safety, safety culture, and psychological safety. And we know that 2024 is going to be a year of value add.
Woohoo! So welcome to 2024. Well, we've had quite a nice few weeks, really, haven't we? We have taken it a bit easy, I have to say. So we're like, okay, let's get our tongue into this podcasting business.
Can we remember how it's done after having a bit of a break?
Absolutely. But it's good to be back.
And it's also good to have had a bit of a break and to feel refreshed and to bring the fullness of ourselves, of the safety collaborators, into what we're going to be doing this year.
Yes. And we've got some things up our sleeve.
We do, we certainly do, and we'll be sharing those with you over the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned.
So one of the things that we invite you to is to visit our website and join our newsletter, which, to be fair, we've kind of dabbled with over the last couple of years, but this year we want to add another medium into how we communicate and share ideas, thoughts, wisdom, etc. So subscribe to our newsletter, which will be coming out monthly, with the first one for the year being on the 2nd of February. So join us on that journey as well. So we've been having an interesting conversation in the last couple of days around events in the news, and specifically we've been talking about the airline events that have happened. And I know there's been 2 or 3 of them that have been quite prominent. And part of that conversation was about the news article that I got that was written by a guy called Simon Calder. He is part of The Independent. He does a travel weekly type podcast, and he's very prolific in the travel industry. So I'm going to read this little short article verbatim, and it starts with, "This isn't your captain speaking, but please pause for a safety briefing. Last year marked a new low in the numbers of both fatal accidents and loss of life in commercial aviation. All passenger jets and international flights arrived safely. Sadly, a total of 86 people died in 2 accidents. Both involved propeller planes on domestic flights, the first in Nepal, the second in Brazil. The day after I filed my report on the 2023 safety review, our screens were filled with the terrifying live scenes from Tokyo Haneda Airport of a large airliner engulfed in flames. An incoming Japan Airlines Airbus A350 struck a smaller plane on which the 5 members of the Japanese Coast Guard died. Any accident involving loss of life is a tragedy. Anxious flyers might conclude from the harrowing footage that aviation is increasingly dangerous. In reality, the successful evacuation of 379 passengers and crew from the blazing Airbus reveals a safety culture that outshines any other industry. So when you step aboard a plane, a culture of global collaboration between aviation security professionals keeping you safe while travelling to the destination of your dreams." So all 379 passengers and crew escaped relatively unscathed after the Japan Airlines flight 516 burst into flames. So there is some footage on YouTube through the news channels that talks about this incident and how that all of those passengers, they were evacuated in under 20 minutes, which is quite extraordinary.
Well, it is, and considering that they had less evacuation points than what they generally train for as an extreme emergency.
Exactly. They actually only had 3 as opposed to the normal, 4 to 6?
4, minimum of 4 on that plane, that they train for.
So that was one, and it was interesting to us, which we'll reveal in a second, beyond the obvious reasons why it was interesting, that 379 people were evacuated very quickly. And that does come down to a culture that supports those safety briefings that we listen to whenever we go flying, they have a purpose. There was another one in Alaska. It was an emergency landing again because part of the fuselage actually flew off. Now, none of the 171 passengers or crew were seriously injured because there was a rapid loss of pressure causing the oxygen mask to fall down, etc. So fortunately, the 2 seats that were next to the part of the plane that blew off were unoccupied, because otherwise 2 people may have used the escape route without wanting to.
Especially if they weren't wearing their seatbelt.
Yes, and we would suggest that everybody probably was wearing their seatbelts. So again, yes, there was an incident, but it was dealt with very quickly. The captain did a great job of working out what do I need to do. They turned around, they landed safely, and so on.
So when we look at these 2 incidents that are very real and I think still very raw for a lot of people at the moment.
Absolutely.
And the introduction that we gave around cultural behaviours and bridging cultures for safety. What is it that we can observe from these around the different types of cultural behaviours that we may be able to see in these incidents, as well as then what might this look like in your country or in the areas that you work?
When we were talking about this earlier today, you said it seemed like it was really orderly. So the Japanese airline, everybody followed procedure. They did. I'm sure there was nervous Nellies on there. I mean, good grief. Why wouldn't you be? You're trying to get out of a burning plane. But they did remain calm and as I say, as much as one can be. And they did follow the procedures. You did not see people, because you can see the footage. Yeah. People weren't grabbing for their stuff or anything like that. They were just leaving everything as it is, taking off their shoes and getting the hell out of there in an orderly fashion.
And everybody got out. Nobody got stampeded or trampled or pushed aside or shoved out the way.
Exactly.
And for me, the other extreme of that orderly would be that chaos. Yes. And when I think about the different countries that we've flown through, the different airports that we've been in, I do question, how would this look like? Should either of these incidents have happened in maybe a country culture or a regional culture that is not so orderly?
No.
That doesn't have that, your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed at a bus line. Everybody lines up in a perfect order. There's no one trying to get to the front. I think you have more examples because you live there.
I mean, how do you actually deal with it? I mean, just getting off at any airport, it always astonishes me how people want to rush from the back of the plane to the front. I mean, they're not going to get off.
And stand up and wait while the doors are open. I do have very annoyed people next to me when I just sit and they look at me and I go, we're all going to get off, I promise. But I recently flew through Ethiopia and I haven't flown through there for a while. And I was on my way to Sweden, to Stockholm. And it was such an incredible contrast. So the flight there was actually very ordered. It was very orderly, well organized. It was actually quite calm. The situation was great. The return flight was like chalk and cheese. Well, as much as I say it was orderly, I still couldn't find the gate because they're doing renovations and the signage wasn't great. Somebody eventually had to show me this little door you had to go through to find the new boarding halls. But on my return flight, it was utter chaos. My flight was delayed. There were so many passengers who were trying to get through security to get to their next flights. And I mean, it was worse than being in a marketplace. And there were a few other South Africans who were following me because I'm thankfully a reasonably experienced traveller. And I was just like straight to the front of security. This is what's happened. This is our flight is already boarding. What have you? We've got to get ahead of the queue. No, come. Eventually managed to get that right. And I just bolted. I just went. So eventually I saw the rest of them arriving. But it was chaotic. And then the buses were chaotic. And then we went to the wrong plane. And then had to stay on the bus because they had to find out which was the correct plane that we were actually supposed to be at. And I was just like...
Throw into that mix
what would
an incident like one of these.
What would this look like?
And that's that continuum of what you said earlier, that orderly versus chaos.
And then what is my responsibility within that? When we talk about, I think about safety and the culture of safety.
Yes. I think something else comes into this. I think our biases and our perceptions also influence how we behave, I suspect, in these scenarios.
And how others behave, and how do you then react to that? Because I do go into organization mode. Probably become very overly controlling of the situation and probably quite dogmatic. And in certain cultures, that would just be seen as bloody rude. But I made sure I got on the plane at the end of the day. But I do question, would I have been a passenger that thought, shit, I want to get my passport? Or would I have followed, as these passengers did, they didn't grab for their bags, as you said, they followed the instructions of this flight attendant. Yep. How calm would I actually stay? I don't know, because thankfully I've never been in that situation, and I really hope I never have to. But I do make it a mission when I get on a plane to listen to the safety briefing, even if I've been on the plane a million times. And if I'm sitting at an emergency exit, even if they come and give me the briefing, I read the instructions to try and be as prepared as possible should a situation like that arise. You know, the training that we do in the hope that you never have to use it.
I mean, I do count the seats.
Yeah. Which direction am I heading?
Behind me, in front of me. I think that gets more difficult on the really big plane, but certainly on the more regional flights, I definitely count the seats. Okay, I got 10 behind, 12 I got in front, you know, which is the closest exit, whatever. What's really important here, and this is now just to support airline attendants, to be honest, at the end of the day, they are actually trained safety professionals.
Yes. Their primary role is to keep us safe and get us to our destination of where we want to get.
So we should listen to them. They're actually, you know, pouring drinks is their second job in reality. And that is in part of the team behind the airline industry that actually makes it so safe, because there are lots of people behind the scenes that we would, as passengers, don't even want to know are there. So that training is important. But I guess bringing it back to this bridging cultures for safety conversation, thinking about, okay, that culture there, they seem to be very orderly. And funny, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, so what's my perception of the Japanese culture through that conversation? There is another story playing out in the news, certainly here in the UK. It's called the Post Office Scandal. This is a dreadful story. It involves about 700 people and all of their related families. The ripple effect is enormous. And it's unbelievable that it's been going on for about 15 years, and some 700 postmasters became criminals in the system because the post office had implemented a new accounting software.
Talk about blame culture.
And it wasn't working properly. But they blamed the people. So there's another culture here. So what was going on there? So there's this culture of, well, let's cover it up. Let's let the people in power look good, maybe.
Wow, that is tragic.
You know, let's blame the little guy. I mean, people lost their life, have committed suicide, have gone to prison, and they were innocent. It is absolutely known today that every single one of them was innocent.
Oh, that just gave me that. Oof.
Yeah. It's dreadful. It's actually probably one of the biggest criminal injustices in UK history, as it turns out, as it's moving forward. It's huge, huge. It involves a big IT company and the government and all sorts of things. But it was all about, well, how do we cover up? You know, how do we...
Who do we point the finger at?
Exactly.
And that whole, you are guilty before we've even proved it.
Correct.
So you are guilty before you are considered innocent.
These stories, what do they tell us about cultural ways of being? And that's one of them. In the post office case, you're guilty until proven otherwise, and maybe we can get away without proving that you're innocent, which is even worse. And in the Japanese story, it was orderly and organised and rule following. Is that true or not? We make some assumptions about that, based on some historical things, but yes. So I guess what we're saying here with this is that each culture has its own way of being, and understanding of what is a culture of care is how do we make that work? Because, funny, as I'm sitting here saying those words, it's making me think, well, what does culture of care actually mean across different cultures? It might mean absolutely nothing to one worldview versus a different worldview.
Exactly.
So where we're heading with this conversation is, in amongst all of this, there's lots of people and individuals. We all have our own personalities that impact the way that we think and speak and act. And that is very powerful, but there is something else that overlays that, and that is our own cultural worldviews. Now, and our cultural worldviews happen at a national level, a familial level, so from your home to your community, to your workplaces, to your governments, to your countries, to your history. It really does keep growing out that way, and it influences the way we think about things.
But going back to what you were saying here, is that it influences that. And a lot of what we talk about when we talk about bridging cultures is going back to, and you and I say this so often, is helping people understand that we are actually just different. And we come from a different perspective. We have different lenses on the world.
Yeah.
And it's not that we're trying to be difficult, but until we have better conversations that help us understand where we all come from, we're not going to be able to get along. We might have difficulty working together. We're not going to have a common understanding of what is expected in our immediate world of work.
Indeed. And I think what's really interesting here is that cultural differences can happen from one home to another.
Oh, completely.
Even in the same country worldview, if you like.
Just look at different towns.
Yeah.
I mean, I love South Africa. But Durban, Johannesburg, the Free State, and Cape Town are completely different ways of being.
Absolutely.
From accents to expectations to norms. And you can either look at it as this, as we've mentioned before, the kaleidoscope and melting pot of the wonderful things, or you can go, oh, you're different, I'm scared of that, and I don't want to know.
I love that you brought in that word kaleidoscope, because one of the tools that we use, and I guess I'm going to bring it into this Bridging Cultures for Safety program, and one of the tools that we kick off with actually something called the 3 Colours of Worldview framework. And it helps us to unlock that intercultural language that we might need to adopt and understand. And when, we think about when we're out on the work sites with multicultural environments, how do we make it, and we're talking beyond the language barrier, which is real, but this is beyond that. That is actually more overcomable today than it's ever been in reality. You literally have a conversation using Google Translate. It may not be perfect, but damn, you'll have a decent conversation.
You're understood.
You absolutely. And so the 3 Colours of Worldview framework helps us to unlock that intercultural language, if you wish, and appreciate that we may all interpret the world a little differently. So the 3 Colours of Worldview is the creation of Marco Blankenburg from a company called KnowledgeWorks. Now, they're based in Dubai in the UAE, and I've done my certification with them twice, actually. Once back in 2013, then I did it again, did a refresher about 3 years ago. What a wonderful pot of cultures in that place. And Marco's actually from Holland, so he's Dutch. And so what a wonderful place to develop these tools and these skills and these frameworks that he has. And so I kind of fell in love with it, really. So the concept of it is, if you think about the colours like red, blue, green, when you mix them up in a big pot, you come with, 18 million different colours and shades of everything. Yeah, so it's that kaleidoscope of colour that we get, which really represents the human race very nicely, because no 2 individuals are the same. None.
Not even in the same family.
Absolutely not. And even their beliefs can be a bit different. The way their perceptions can be different. Ask any bunch of siblings and say, did you grow up the same way as I did? And they didn't. We didn't.
No.
It's different.
We're not even going to go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, no. So the 3 Colours of Worldview are considered to be the core drivers of culture. And they are honour, shame, so honour versus shame, innocence versus guilt, and power versus fear. Now, we are actually, all of us, all over the world, are a mix of those 3 dimensions. Drivers, if you like. They're not really so much dimensions, but drivers. And what do we mean by these? I recently did my own 3 Colours Worldview again, a self-assessment, which was fun because we've done some updates. So I did it again, and I'm giving feedback on the report and stuff, which is terrific. So now I was born in Australia to Austrian migrants, so I'm a third culture kid. I have lived on 5 different continents during my lifetime, and my assessment is that I am 25.2% honour shame, 55.6% innocent guilt, and 19.2% power fear. So my innocent guilt is a very strong component of how I view the world. And when we look at those three drivers, they are really, when we talk about honour versus shame, we think about your cultural preferences. And so when we're talking about honour is, what are we doing that which brings honour to my family, to my community, to my workplace? What's doing the right thing, which is that innocent guilt piece. And then, of course, with the power fear, it's doing that brings control, power and influence. While I was doing some work on this, I started to look at these words and I thought, most of these are all about emotion.
Even if it's not about it, it still drives and impacts and influences every single one of these.
If you want to reach out to us, use the hashtag Conversations That Matter and we'll pick it up on the socials. Or look out for us on LinkedIn, Karen Ovari, me, Nuala Gage, or our company, Safety Collaborations. Now, back to this week's show.
So we look at these cultural preferences as a mixture of these drivers. We run a really lovely activity with this 3 colours worldview. We can do it virtually, we can do it in person, it works just fine. So if you've got a group of people, let's say you've got a team, and it's quite a diverse team, and everybody does the assessment, you then ask people to actually look at, first of all, the first round would be beyond your strongest of the 3, what would be your next preference? And then you start to think about, well, what do you value about that? What triggers you about that? So you actually get people to stand in each of those 3 areas. And the conversations are really, really interesting.
It must be, and on such a deeper level.
Yeah.
I mean, even just getting to an understanding of, when we talk about almost double clicking on those.
Yes.
Do we have the same understanding? You and I spoke about the word power earlier. What does power represent or mean for you? What does honor mean? What does fear? And I think that is just having that conversation alone just opens up such a world of understanding.
I was a little bit surprised because I've done this report before. I kind of had some understanding of it. And I was thinking, I don't know if I'm so innocent guilt oriented, really. I know that's been a strong part of me. But I come from a generalised speaking, Australia, the UK, Americas tend to be more innocent guilt driven, because they have a judicial system, a schooling system that says, don't do this. That's the right way. That's the wrong way. You're right.
Wrong way. You will end up in detention.
Exactly. There'll be other parts. And coming back to the Japan airline thing, there's probably a perception around that culture that might be more about honour shame. So if somebody was running around and they would not be honouring other people around them, they would be shaming. The Middle East is very honour shame oriented. Now, all 3 drivers are everywhere. They're all over the world, and as the world becomes more global, if you like, there's so many different cultures in Australia, in South Africa, in everywhere. So they all play out. But the more we can understand how we see it and understand our perceptions and our biases, it helps us to expand our cultural agility.
You just triggered something for me, because that understanding is so crucial, because having this conversation and listening to it, there may be someone who's listening and you're going, this is actually making the hair stand up on the back of my neck, or this is triggering me to make me angry. How could you say that? How could you be putting people in boxes or putting labels on people? Isn't the work you do all about taking away the labels and helping people see each other for who they are as people?
Yep.
But developing an understanding and knowing why we sometimes react the way we do or where this comes from. Again, like any of the tools that we use, it is a tool in your toolbox. And it's not about putting anyone in a box. And we've spoken about this with personality diversity as well. But It's around really creating a space for healthy conversations so that we can have the right conversation that doesn't end up leading to something going wrong in the working environment or in a relationship.
Again, with all of these things, context matters.
Completely.
When I was doing the questionnaire, there were a couple I'm going, it depends. right? But you have to make a choice, of course. So they will drive us. So depending on the context, they'll drive us towards how do we honour the situation or uphold the honour of a situation? Or is it a context of we need to do the right thing, follow the regulations, follow the rules? Or do we need to maintain authority and empower others maybe? So maybe it's about maintaining power. So it's about understanding those nuances within ourselves. So it really is all about perception and observation. And then how do we have conversations around that?
And what do we do with it individually?
Yes.
Because when I understand why I react or how I do things, I then get to make a choice. And choice is the most wonderful thing because I can say, what do I choose? Regardless of the emotion I am feeling or the experience that I have had in the past, what do I choose in the now?
Yes.
And sometimes I'm going to make choices that maybe go in the opposite direction of the traditions I grew up with, or the rules in which I grew up, or the customs that I had, because I'm going, this is no longer serving me as well in the situation that I am in, and I am not successfully interacting with those around me.
Such a good point.
So how do I bring them towards me? And what choices do I make?
Or how do I go towards them?
Yes, because that's really critical as well.
In a work scenario, so you work for a company that might have an overarching worldview of X, you come from a different worldview of Y, but somehow you have to work together. And your colleague comes from W, wherever W is. I think it's a Z, X, Y, Z, but anyway, yeah. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit now. I just want to summarise how the three worldviews interact, because you're quite right in what you brought up. I don't want people to think that, oh, you're a power-fear person, so therefore you're that, or you see it this way. There is no right or wrong in any of this. Everyone is a valuable team member, a team leader. Everybody can be all of those things. So it isn't about that. It's about helping these intercultural conversations. We've all heard the stories of someone who gets posted to another country to work as the leader of an organisation, and they don't last. They burn out. They have really big mental health issues because they haven't had the help.
Understanding?
Yeah. And this is much more than just food and handshakes.
Yes. It's deep.
And in the next episode, we'll actually talk about the 12 dimensions of culture, which is all about how we see power, how we see communication, how we share knowledge. And that's different for all of us. So the three worldviews interact in a very, and I literally have taken this from the Knowledge Works site actually. In societies that see things primarily through the innocent guilt lens, so meaning what is honourable is whatever follows the letter and spirit of the law. So it's interesting that they use that term honourable there, because we are, so this is right, that's wrong, you know. It's a red light, I will stop. And the car beside me keeps going in a different country to the one I'm in now, right? And you're going, hang on, he's just broken the law, right? People from this culture...
Oh, the law is here to be interpreted.
Exactly. People from this culture can find it hard to understand the diverse range of things that can fall under honour and shame in other cultures. So people with a more honour-shame orientation can find it difficult to correctly interpret the actions of people with a more innocent guilt preference. Because honour-shame isn't about right and wrong. Honour-shame is about how do we honour the community and not shame the community. So who often display behaviours that bring shame to themselves or their colleagues. And that was a really interesting line for me to read today, or to be reminded of. Our behaviours might actually shame ourselves in the order of honouring some law or rule. Now in an honour-shame culture, they're not going to do that. They don't understand that at all. No. They'll actually sit there and say, what's the point of right and wrong if you're not honouring that person, or you're going to shame yourself? So it's all very interesting, and they do this without realising that they've done it. Power fear is a natural part of many hierarchies. You think of political structures, our educational structures, our health systems, right? There's hierarchies everywhere. And people with a power fear orientation believe authority and hierarchy are important. So people in positions of power have a choice to make. What they do with that power, for example. Will they use it to be empowering and life-giving? Or they use it to become more powerful and instill fear and insecurity and ambiguity in the people around them. So power can be very gifting or not. It's about choices, and it tends to be very hierarchical. So you think about family situations. The kids have grown up with the father of fear, or you've gone to school where I don't think they smack you anymore, but they used to give you the ruler.
Well, some of us are old enough to have had that experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Sadly.
Right, no, I never got smacked, but that's okay. I was a wuss. There is a little thing called the 3-colour of worldview litmus test. Now, without even knowing what your preferences are and all of that stuff, you've probably got an idea. So you can apply this to your internal world, so your thoughts, your feelings, as well as your external world, so how your words and actions might impact the world around you. So the first question is, does my action bring honour to those involved, or does it bring them shame? Is it the right thing to do, or does it do justice to those involved? And is it empowering and life-giving, or does it diminish fear, or does it instill and increase fear? So if you ask yourself those 3 questions, and they'll be on the show notes, of course, and you can pretty much use them for anything and every day. So some examples might be, you could use that test to reflect on previous situations. Why did it go well? What did I mess up? Or you could use it in crafting the behaviours for developing relationships that you want to improve upon. Or you could use it to assess how are these policies and procedures and pieces of communication going to be received by the diverse audience that we have. So they're just some examples. Let us know how else you think it could be useful. So understanding our personalities is helpful, as are our perceptions and biases. The 3 colours of worldview assessment may well be your first step to understanding and developing your intercultural agility. These are just thoughts that we wanted to share with you today to get the juices flowing around the concept of how do we bridge cultures for safety to develop and continue developing that culture of care.
It would be really interesting because this is such a big subject, and you can't cover it in a half an hour podcast, probably not even in a 3-hour podcast. But it would be interesting to hear, what has this triggered in people? Where are you sitting going, this is really interesting, I want to know more, or, oh, this has just triggered a whole lot of emotion that I don't think I want to face? Or, what is this triggering in you right now?
It's a whole lot of codswallop.
Exactly, as you're listening. And how can we have a conversation around that?
Yeah.
And on our website, on the show notes page, there's a fabulous little form that doesn't sign you up to anything, even though we would love you to sign up to the newsletter.
Yes.
But tell us, what is this triggered for you? It will come to us and we'll respond to you. It would be great to hear. So do reach out to us if you'd like to find out more about this. Whether you as an individual or a group and you want to do an assessment. And more importantly, if you'd like to know a little bit more about our Bridging Cultures for Safety program, we have a fabulous page on our website, safetycollaborations.com, where you can get a bit more information, or reach out to us at hello@safetycollaborations.com. Because if we want to create a culture of care in diverse cultures, we have to start exploring the unknown and helping that become known by having the deep conversations that matter. In our next episode, we will go deeper. We will explore another piece of the puzzle, the 12 dimensions of culture, and help you explore how do you bring this into your world a little bit more.
Thank you for joining us today. And we are delighted to be back to be having more conversations that matter with you this year. So do connect with us. You can obviously see us on our website at safetycollaborations.com. You will find the show notes here and also a space for you to ask us any questions or make suggestions. We're really keen to hear from you. Leave us a message. You can find us on LinkedIn, of course, Safety Collaborations, Karen Avari, Nuala Gage. We are actually pretty easy to find. And sharing is caring. Follow us on your favourite podcast platform. Leave us a review. 5 stars would be really good. And doing these things helps us grow and share our collective conversations. Till next week, stay safe and stay well.